Good evening. You are listening to the Fumblerooski podcast by Power 88 Dean Radio and Fans Only Sports Network. I'm Adam Wright, and I am here with a guest and a new co-host. So as I mentioned before, we have a new episode just for Thursday nights, and we will have a guest on as a co-host every single week. So let us know if you want to be a guest. We're looking for a lot of them. But without further ado, we also have Nicholas Carlson, who is a new co-host for us. Not so much new. He actually we announced that he was going to be joining us about a month ago, but he is actually a student athlete, and he's had a lot of games, very busy schedule, but we finally get him on. Nick, welcome to the show. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, Adam, thank you once again for having me on. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Nicholas Carlson. I am a junior sports broadcasting major here at Dean College. I am also a member on the men's volleyball team here at Dean and also a play-by-play and color commentator for the Fans Only Sports Network.
That's right. You are actually also with the Fans Only Sports Network, which we're actually affiliated with. So this is a familiar face to some of our listeners. If you recognize the voice, possibly that beautiful voice, that's him right there, the legend himself, Nicholas Carlson. And we also have Jake Baskin, who is our guest of the week. He is going to be talking about the NFL broadcasters in his personalized segment. So, Jake, welcome to the show. How about you introduce yourself?
Well, good to be with you, Adam. I'm Jake Baskin, a senior at Dean College. I'm from Madison, Connecticut, and a pretty big Ravens fan. I also am an aspiring play-by-play announcer, held a variety of jobs there, but I have an interest in the field of sports broadcasting in just learning the news about it, and this is the busiest broadcasting landscape, or the biggest broadcasting changes I've probably ever seen in my lifetime as an NFL fan. And, the Super Bowl is going to look a lot different. The way you watch the NFL and the networks you associate them with are going to look a lot different. And I'm excited to talk about that.
Certainly. I can't wait for you to go over all of that stuff. We actually haven't been able to touch on that enough, as we've previously only had one episode a week. Now we have two. But Jake, again, welcome to the show. But we're going to jump right into our coverage. We have a lot planned for you tonight. The NFL draft, of course. We'll talk about Jake's guest segment about the NFL broadcasting. There's some crazy rumors surrounding A.J. Brown, Deebo Samuel, and DK Metcalf that have just gotten out of hand. But first, we're going to hit on how the NFL draft is 1 month away, actually less than a month away, probably about 2-3 weeks. We're getting really close. I think it's April 28th. It's around that area, right?
I think so. They're putting it back on site in Vegas now after a couple of years of it being virtual.
Yeah, that's going to be great. But so it's just less than 1 month away. We're going to finally start covering that. So, guys, give me one prospect in this draft that intrigues you the most. We'll start with Carlson.
I got to keep it with my favorite college team, my man, Trayvon Walker, heading into the draft, the defensive end out of Georgia, the 6'5", 270-pound junior. Entering the draft, he's liking his chances. He came off a very hot year at Georgia, obviously with the ring and the title for the school, as he's going to use this as his springboard into the league. I personally think whatever team is going to grab him, and as of right now, it's showing that the Lions, Texans, Jets, and even the Panthers are some of them that have shown interest in Walker. I think for any of those teams, that just revitalizes the defense.
I'm glad that you mentioned a name that isn't Aiden Hutchinson or Kayvon Thibodeau, because it feels like they've completely stolen the spotlight. So thank you for mentioning somebody other than that. But this is a very good defense focused draft, especially on that front seven. So that's going to be great. But Jake, what's your pick?
I'm going to also stick on defense, but I'm going to go to the secondary and choose Sauce Gardner out of Cincinnati. Now, Cincinnati's been the prominent group of five program over the last couple of years, and I think Gardner's a huge part of it. People won't even throw to his side of the field anymore, and I understand the group of five competition is a little bit less, but you have to think teams recognize Gardner, and he did well in his showings against bigger programs such as Alabama. He knows how good he is. He loves to talk, and I think all good cornerbacks and safeties, just like all good wide receivers, really need to know how to talk the game as well, really know how to believe in themselves, and Gardner certainly does, and from what I've seen on the pro days, he's vaulted himself firmly into top 10 discussion, and maybe even will crack the lower end of the top 5.
You know, I really like Sauce Gardner. Whoever picks him is going to get a shutdown corner, a generational type of defensive back. You talk about maybe a Jalen Ramsey, or even dare I say Deion Sanders type of player at his ceiling. You know, we always have high expectations for draft prospects, but my pick is going to be, I'm going on the offensive side of the ball, and I'm going to hit on Jameson Williams. So Williams is a player who put up an incredible statistical year. He had 1,500 yards, 20 touchdown passes. This guy looked like he was destined for greatness in the NFL. Then he goes into the the national championship game, torn ACL. He's out, and he's most likely going to miss the start of the season. However, this is a player that's drawn so much buzz and would have been the first quarter wide receiver taken off the board. Now his draft status sort of tanks a little bit. So I kind of want to see how he does and who snags him and gets what's quite frankly to me a steal. So I really like that player. But what do you guys think of that? Jameson Williams.
Yeah, I think, teams are always in the look for good receivers. And, there have been some receivers like Chris Olave who I think have really had some highlight reels, but there hasn't been that guy who's like really going to make it into that sort of game breaker category this year. So I'm interested to see if Williams is one of those.
Certainly. And this is a wide receiver group that is built that has speed, and they all what was the stat, like there were 8 wide receivers that had a 40-yard dash that was under 4.2 or something like that. Something crazy. I completely forgot the statistic. I'll have to look it up and we'll look at it later. But we have a couple of comments from Finnemore Media. There was one that is a little thumbs up there. And here we have, injuries make me nervous. I agree. Injuries do make me a little nervous. I hate injuries because, is that Tuck in the background?
That is Tuck.
Is that Tuck? Get Tuck over here. Get Tuck over here. We need a
appearance. Get over here.
We need another get over here, Tuck.
What do you need?
Hey, buddy.
Hello.
Talk about a cameo appearance. That's awesome. Look at that. But injuries, it really does suck. It doesn't matter what player. Patriots are not given. I'm a Patriots fan. It sucks. I can't stand injuries. I hate it. And, I just love good football. That's why I have a football podcast, not just about my Patriots, not just about the Ravens, I love football. And another one, where's Doug? Doug is my dog, in case you haven't noticed. But anyways,
did you name the dog after the character from Up?
That is exactly what we named him after. And we actually have another comment saying, "Cool cameo, Tuck." I don't know where he went, but that was awesome seeing him walk by. We got him in for part of an episode. But anyways, next we are going to talk about teams there's a lot of teams who have a new quarterback, and they are all looking to sort of contend here. But we're going to hit on that next. You are listening to the Fumblerooski podcast.
Here's Edelman broken up, and the pass is no sign yet. Edelman comes down with a football. They're saying it's a catch. This is caught. Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable! Swings it way down the field to Watkins. Sammy Watkins for the touchdown!
You are listening to the Fumblerooski podcast. I'm Adam Wright. Nick Carlson in his debut appearance as a co-host, and our special guest, Jake Baskin, here with you. So, a team has won the Super Bowl with a new quarterback, with their quarterback in their first year, 2 years in a row. Now, several teams have upgraded at the quarterback position, hoping to be next in line. The Broncos traded for Russell Wilson. The Browns traded for Deshaun Watson, Matt Ryan to the Colts, and this is a bit of a stretch, bit of a reach, but I'm going to mention Carson Wentz to the Commanders because he is a new quarterback, and he is, say what you want about Carson Wentz and Matt Ryan, they're competent quarterbacks, and he's a new quarterback on a new team. So, which of these teams has the best chance to win the Super Bowl? Carlson.
Oh, I mean, that's a tough stretch. I mean, all these what we would call veteran quarterbacks moving around to new teams. I think, this is I feel like it's a good opportunity for a lot of these old quarterbacks get a new start. Nobody would think of Matt Stafford as a Super Bowl quarterback unless that trade never happens. If that trade never happens, he's still wasting away in Detroit, and I think the Rams wouldn't have made the playoffs under Goff. But as much as I hate to say it, I want to see the Commanders make a run. I want to see them make a run, and I want to see it with everything Washington's been through the past few years. I would like to see Washington get it. I think they deserve one.
That is bold, I've got to say, especially, and think about everything that that Carson Wentz has gone through with, the Colts moving on from him, which is fine. I get it. They figured he's not the guy after a year. That's fine. But what has happened here is what some of the management at Indianapolis has said. We needed a change of scenery desperately and stuff like that. And then there's Carson Wentz here, like, I'm sorry, and he's like, he's posting on Instagram saying, I'm taking the high road. I'm like, I feel really bad for you, dude. But Baskin.
I'm going to put this through. Now, I think the best quarterback who was traded is Wilson, but you have to realize that he's in a division with Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert and Derek Carr, who seems to be underrated by pretty much everybody. The Deshaun Watson got traded to the Browns, but he also hasn't played in a year, and he's in a division with a team Joe Burrow just led to the Super Bowl and also a former MVP in Lamar Jackson. And even with what the uncertainty the Steelers have, you can never completely count them out. I'll tell you what, if I really think the position is in place there for Matt Ryan, who I do believe in his talent in some ways, and that Colts offense that they have, I think that can be an offense that's pretty good in both passing and running. And it's not as tough of a division. You have Tennessee, who's a pretty good team, but I think they will be less beaten down by the time the conference playoffs start. And I think of the four, I wouldn't pick the Colts to win, but like of the four, I think the Colts certainly have the best chance to.
I think the Colts are an underrated team this going into this season. They missed the playoffs, and barely, by the way, and they started off 1-4. People forget this. They started off 1-4 and they went on an 8-2 run. And everybody thought, okay, this team's balling right now. And it was all with just Carson Wentz sort of, being a game manager. And now they upgrade at that position with Matt Ryan, who's a pretty solid passer. And so I like the move. I think that team is going to be very solid. However, my pick is going to be Deshaun Watson on the Browns. I think this is a match made in heaven. This is a Cleveland Browns team that's had a lot of talent in the past few years, and they haven't done anything with it, if you will. They've made one playoff appearance. They missed the other 2 years when they've had all this talent, and now they have a quarterback here. And they also bring in Amari Cooper, and you have one of the best rushing duos in the game, in my opinion. You have a great offensive line, a ferocious defense led by Myles Garrett in the front seven and Denzel Ward, and a lot of other pieces over there. I think that team is all around has pieces, and they still have a first-round pick they can use on a wide receiver too, because they did release Jarvis Landry, which might be a problem, but I think they're gonna draft a wide receiver too in the first round, and they'll call it a day.
It's entirely possible. I think that Browns team is pretty good. It's probably the best of the teams overall. I just think you're in a division with three teams that can very much play, two quarterbacks who are, at least on Watson's level. And even if you do get past that, you may have to face one of them again in the playoffs. I'm just not sure, with Watson being a year out of football, that this is the year that the Browns are going to be, the franchise savior team the team has been looking for since they came back.
I understand the argument with that. He hasn't played for a little while, but he's a pro athlete, and I'm sure he knows how to keep in shape while he's out of football. It partially wasn't his fault that he was facing all these allegations. He really couldn't play the game of football because he didn't want to play with the Texans, and he was facing all these allegations. So the Texans couldn't even trade him. So he was sort of forced to take a year off from football, and that caused some issues. It could cause a little bit of rust here in the early going of the season, but he's a talented quarterback. He's too talented not to succeed, and that roster is loaded. I think when it comes to even the AFC, I think this team is on the upper echelon of teams that could really compete and go all in for that Super Bowl. But anyways, next we are going to talk about how there's a lot of elite wide receivers who are entering contract years, namely DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, Deebo Samuel, and they've been involved in some crazy rumors, even though they really don't hold much water. We're going to talk about that next. Don't go anywhere. This is the Fumblerooski podcast.
Here's Edelman broken up, and the pass is no sign yet. Edelman comes down with a football. They're saying it's a catch. It's caught! Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable! Swings it way down the field to Watkins! Sammy Watkins for the touchdown!
Welcome back to the Fumblerooski podcast. I'm Adam Wright here with you, co-host Nick Carlson, guest Jake Baskin. So, wide receivers DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, and Deebo Samuel are all entering contract years. And because of that, they're due for either very large extensions with their teams, or they hit the open market and another team pays them. So either way, they get paid, barring some serious injury. And because of that, they've been involved in a lot of rumors, just driven by the media, that they're going to be traded. Most of them don't hold water. Besides a couple, it was a couple of hours ago, Deebo Samuel, he took his 49ers profile pic off of his Instagram, and it's just a black screen right now for his profile sort of circle, if you will, on Instagram, where you see that. And on top of that, he unfollowed the 49ers. So that's really the only thing that there is. And even DK Metcalf has shut down rumors for him. He has said, I think there was something that Mike Gaffalo or Tom Pelissero put out, and he said I haven't heard anything per at DK Metcalf. And it's interesting how that whole thing is going on. But what are you guys' thoughts on these rumors going on?
I mean, I'll be the first one to say it. A lot of these, as you said, these are just long reaches. Some of these I don't even think, I'm surprised that the media would even consider them, to even hold them a thought. But one that keeps popping up to me in the DK Metcalf trade are the New York Jets trying to reach out, see if they can potentially grab Metcalf. Everyone would be saying that the Seahawks would receive a 10th overall pick for this year's draft and I think it was a second round in the 23. So you got two high draft picks, one of this year, which is in a very interesting draft class, and then next year, who we're starting to see a healthy mix of both offense and defense for next year. So I think if this is the Seahawks, I think this is your safest option. You're getting a guaranteed first this year and then a guaranteed second next year on top of the picks they already have.
I don't always buy these trade rumors, and I think that is what they are, just rumors. I can see reasons why I don't why I would believe them, namely, like, none of the three have like a completely elite quarterback, but also in Metcalf's case, he's going to be playing with a new quarterback, probably one that's worse. In Samuel's case, he's going to be probably playing with a new quarterback in Trey Lance, who nobody really knows about yet. And in Brown's case, he and Tannehill have made a pretty good connection. Of course, Titans run the ball more than every other team in the league. So we'll see what happens. I think it's a little bit too early, and if they're going to be traded, I think they'll know closer to the season once the mini camps get in, the training camps, the preseason, the outlook for the season happens. I think it's just too early to tell.
Yeah, this is just something that it feels like this has been one of the craziest off seasons we've ever seen, and players who we never dreamed of to be traded were traded. Like, for example, who ever saw Tyreek Hill getting traded this offseason? Probably nobody. And while we all saw it coming with Deshaun Watson, it had been so long that we could never actually think that Deshaun Watson would end up get traded. We just thought that thing was never going to end. And same with Russell Wilson. We heard some rumors, but he was less likely than Deshaun Watson to get traded. And you can make an argument for Tyreek Hill. Not really, but you know what I'm saying. All of those players unlikely to get traded, and they did. And now we're looking at players who are entering contract years. And obviously, after such a crazy offseason, we're going to be thinking, oh, so they're just going to get traded too now, right? Well, wrong. No, there's a little bit of loyalty. There's a little bit of, teams who are players who kind of like where they are. DK Metcalf is a trooper for wanting to stay in Seattle after, all these players being dealt away. I wouldn't blame him if he wanted to leave, but nonetheless, He's a good soldier for wanting to stay. I respect him for it. Wouldn't blame him if he wanted to leave. I can't say the same for AJ Brown and Deebo Samuel because they're in pretty solid spots, but still, it's like any time there's any tiny thing going on, it's like I see it with a lot of different fan bases. You'll see any player on a team that is not there, that is not a fan of their team, when he expresses any sort of frustration with his team, then you'll see all like 10 different fans making jersey swaps like right away, not even thinking about what it is. And I'm sorry. It's a possibility, maybe at the trade deadline, maybe at some point, but there's really no water to be held here in any of this. So it's just all unbelievably crazy, but it's really stupid. And I feel bad for these players who actually kind of want to stay with their teams and they're being encouraged to leave. I'm like, are we just like, what are we doing here? It's like, it's all just crazy. But, any other thoughts on this topic before we head to the next segment?
I would, sometimes these trades don't materialize. Look at how often Aaron Rodgers has been rumored to be traded, and he just signed another extension, even, with the team having drafted his backup, just like they did with Rodgers with Brett Favre. Sometimes these don't happen. Sometimes the things can be worked out, or, they don't have to be as long as the team's playing well. It really, we'll just see. It's really just something the media needs to talk about before draft time.
Definitely. But anyways, we are going to move on. And next we have the guest segment where Jake Baskin is going to talk a little bit about a lot of the broadcasting changes that have kind of been sort of in the background here because of this crazy offseason, as we've been talking about. We're going to get to that next. You're listening to the Fumblerooski podcast.
Here's Edelman broken up, and the pass is no sign yet. Edelman comes down with a football. They're saying it's a catch. It's caught! Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable! Swings it way down the field to Watkins! Sammy Watkins for the touchdown!
This is the Fumblerooski podcast by Power 88 and Fans Only Sports Network. I'm Adam Wright, Nick Carlson, and our special guest, Jake Baskin. So we are officially at our very first guest segment. So what happens is you become a guest on our show. You just talk to us, and we'll get you on a show eventually. And you get your own personalized segment. You can talk about whatever you want. It doesn't even have to be football related. This happens to be football related, and we're going to enjoy talking about all of these different moves, as we haven't really had the chance to talk about this. But Jake, so what do you have on some of the broadcast changes around the NFL this offseason?
Well, I think this is the wildest NFL free agent broadcasting frenzy I have ever seen. It started, when Al Michaels had an agreement with NBC to, give up the Super Bowl with Mike Tirico waiting in the wings. And Mike Tirico is a great football announcer, and he's going to be calling the Super Bowl for NBC for the foreseeable future. But some things also made some change. Is Michaels found a spot at Amazon with the new Thursday Night Football package. Michaels is 77 years old and wants to keep going. And they brought in, after a few failed attempts to get other analysts, they brought in Kirk Herbstreit, the lead college football announcer for ESPN, to be Michaels' partner. And then the bombshell, the whopper, was Troy Aikman first going to ESPN to be the new analyst on Monday Night Football. Monday Night Football's had a lot of criticisms since Tirico and John Gruden left. And they found Aikman, and then Joe Buck, who's been with Fox since the very beginning and has called the Super Bowl or been their lead announcer for 20 years. He decides to follow Aikman as well as his wife to ESPN, and Buck and Aikman are the new Monday Night Football booth, which gives them instant credibility, and ESPN jumps into the Super Bowl rotation in a few years as well. So that leaves Fox kind of open on their top team. They have 2 of the next 3 Super Bowls, and they've elevated their very good number 2 announcer, Kevin Burkhardt, to the top play-by-play job. I'm a big fan of Burkhardt. I get the sense a lot of people may know his voice, but may not really know him. I think he's going to do a good job. And this also will save Fox a considerable amount of money, considering how much Buck got from ESPN. They have not filled his role as Aikman's role as the analyst yet, but Burkhardt worked last year with Greg Olsen, the ex-tight end from the Carolina Panthers. He and Burkhardt did a great job last year. I'd hope to see Olsen gets the move up, but there have been some rumors. There have been some rumors about trying to get John Lynch from the 49ers GM job, who also used to be Burkhardt's partner. But this is like the craziest switch up because, for all of my life, I remember one of the first Super Bowls I watched had Greg Gumbel as the voice for CBS, but it's been a 3-person rotation mostly. Joe Buck, Jim Nantz, and Al Michaels. And as it's going to go to 4, Buck moves to ESPN. Michaels gives way to Mike Tirico. Kevin Burkhardt joins the rotation. It's just crazy. And as someone who loves the art of sports broadcasting and talking about it, it's fun for me. But I'd like to get your thoughts on it.
All right. Well, there you have it. So Nick, what are your thoughts on all of this?
I mean, honestly, I think this is huge. This is something that the NFL really hasn't seen in a while. Plus, you throw in the games that were live on Nickelodeon. I think this is a perfect time for Amazon to kind of step in. Nickelodeon went first, took the trial run, saw their errors, and now Amazon's stepping in with hopefully the upgrades, and their roster's already starting out amazing. You just took a top-tier broadcaster and you're just going to add him into your lineup quick and easy just like that. I think Amazon's going to make a move, and honestly, I think we're going to get used to them broadcasting NFL for a while.
All right. I got to say, so I can't be the only one who doesn't like this move for Al Michaels going over to Amazon, where not everybody has Amazon Prime, where, you have to pay for a subscription and everything. And me personally, I've always been an Al Michaels fan, going back to, my childhood back in, Super Bowl 49, hearing him call Malcolm Butler's game clinching interception and calling, what was it? Julian Edelman's go ahead touchdown pass in that Super Bowl. That's just such a memorable moment, and Al Michaels was part of that. And I just hate to see him go over to Amazon. And maybe I'll like it a little more down the road, but I have to pay and have it get a subscription to go over to Thursday Night Football, not, Sunday Night Football where he usually is. It just feels like a downgrade, and it's an underutilization on the NFL's part for, putting a guy like that on Thursday Night Football on Amazon. I'm just not a fan.
Yeah, maybe. I think you have to think strategically if you're one of the other networks. ESPN wanted Joe Buck, who's also been in the Super Bowl rotation, and they got him. NBC, pushed him out for Mike Tirico, who's had some big game experience. And I think Fox might have thought about it, but, they got a guy who's 30 years younger. They're thinking long-term, and a guy who costs maybe a quarter as much. And Michaels needs to go. And if Michaels keeps wanting to call games, which he does, he's 77, he doesn't want to retire. I think you go where you can land. At Amazon, he has, basically total control. He immediately becomes the face of it. Sure, it's going to be a little harder to see him. Sure, you're not going to be on playoff games. He might get some NBC work still, but I think in his part, it's you go where you can get hired and where you can get paid.
Yeah, I guess that certainly is an interesting point to bring up, a possibility. He wants to go he doesn't want to stop, but he doesnn't really want to be maybe he possibly doesn't want to be on the big, in a big spotlight anymore, and he kind of just wants to head over to Thursday night football, and maybe that could be, the retirement home, if you will, where he's still broadcasting, but he's not calling Super Bowls or Sunday night football. But we have another comment here this is a new person. We have Shallon. So what it says is, would the NFL benefit from the multicast method that college football playoff games run with? I find myself jumping over to 98.5 on big plays on the instant take on on Patriots games while the game on. And then says, beyond the Peyton and Eli show, but more of a coach's round table or ex-players. So kind of something like, I get it. Yeah. So something like how they do with the Mannings, if you will, where they kind of, they're kind of talking during the games, but like the game's on, and like every once in a while, it's kind of in the background, but it's not. What do you guys think of that?
I mean, I think you have to do it for special events just to get the novelty of it. I don't think you can do it on a weekly basis. If you want to watch like people talking over it, just subscribe to NFL Red Zone. It really loses its edge. If it's, like the NBA has tried it this year with Jamal Crawford and Quentin Richardson doing a weekly segment of games. Look, I respect those two guys. They were good players. They were good personalities, but they're not Peyton or Eli Manning. They're not Alex Rodriguez. You need to get exactly the right people to do it. And I really think it'll lose some of its luster if every network has one of those.
Yeah, it is a very unique thing, and it is something that I would like for the NFL to toy with a little bit. But I get you do make a point. You don't want to overdo it, go too much with it, because then it might take away from the actual broadcasters who are calling play-by-play on the games. But Carlson, what are your thoughts on it?
No, I mean, I love the idea. I loved watching it during the college football playoffs because that drew a lot of people in there. This is new. This is different. Let's hear what they have to say. But I mean, in terms of the NFL running it, I think it just might have to be one or two games throughout the season. Obviously, whoever they stick on it, I believe that's going to be the hardest choice, who they're going to have work that. Because I feel like if they pick the wrong crowd, that idea is just going to crash and burn as fast as it took off. It needs to be the right people for this, and I just hope the NFL just doesn't run away with this and say every game's getting a round table.
Yeah, certainly, and I hope they don't, but I'm sure they will. They'll always levitate towards the big shiny object, which is going to be the roundtable conversations. These celebrities, the Mannings or the college playoff games going out and doing this. But it's a good thing. It's a cool thing. So I'm not complaining too much, but I just hope they don't overdo it. But do you guys have any other thoughts before we end the show here tonight?
Yeah, I want to, it's going to be an interesting situation for Kevin Burkhardt, who probably like 2 months ago did not expect this to happen. And suddenly, after years of being number two behind some guy you're so synonymous with, Fox and Joe Buck, he's going to get to call 2 of the next 3 Super Bowls. And it's, it's not even a year is not a lot of time to get yourself mentally prepared for it. So I think he's a very good announcer, but it's going to be tough for him, and I'm excited to see how he shows up.
Yeah, I'm going to admit, I'll admit, I don't remember. I don't know the name, Kevin Burkhardt, but I definitely know his voice. If you're, because I do watch a lot of football. Obviously, I have a football podcast. But I'm definitely excited to get to know Kevin Burkhardt. Actually, hear his voice and say, oh, that's Kevin Burkhardt, rather than, here's Joe Buck on. Everybody on the planet knows who Joe Buck is for good reasons and bad reasons. Because some people don't like him. Some people like him. I never hated him. I think he's solid. But anyways, guys, that'll do it for us tonight. thank you for listening to us. Be sure to tune in to us live Tuesdays at 7:30 on Twitter and Facebook through Fans Only Sports Network. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We also have all our episodes available on Spotify, Spreaker, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and so much more. Also, be sure to follow our Instagram at Fumblerooski_podcast to keep up with our podcast and the latest coverage on the NFL. Jake Baskin, thank you very much for being with us today. We loved having you and getting your insight on the broadcasting in the NFL. So otherwise, we will see you on Tuesday. Over and out.